Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be checking out Batman Superman World's Finest 2024 Annual by Mark Waid, Cullen Bunn, Dennis Culver, Stephanie Williams and Christopher Cantwell. This is an all-star annual to kick off the year, and it takes a little detour away from Batman and Superman and instead focuses on the world's finest, using that moniker that Batman and Superman have used for years as a sort of canvassing term for all of DC's heroes, something the book has done a number of times under Mark Waid. Mark Waid is joined by Cullen Bunn for a real fun Mr. Mxyzptlk and Batmite-centric storyline involving the Just Us League, the fifth dimensional imp version of the Justice League. Now, Mxyzptlk has gathered the heroes from across the fifth dimension because something is coming for them. However, the team are more interested in fighting with one another and just playing around and having fun, as fifth dimensional imps are to do. Before he can fully reveal what exactly is going on, the big bads are revealed for the book, and that is the Legion of Doom, or at least their fifth dimensional versions, who are all being led by some sort of cloaked being who runs right through the entire Just Us League and leaves only Mxyzptlk and Batmite left standing. And of course, Mxyzptlk, who isn't really a hero, just kind of ups and leaves and kind of abandons the team, as, you know, that is totally something he would do, and he ends up running away, obviously to Earth Zero, as this was sort of the prologue to Mark Waid's next big story arc in the World's Finest ongoing after he's finished with the Kingdom Come arc in the next issue. Both Waid and Bunn really sped through the plot on this one, and it really kind of makes sense as this is all set up for that next arc, and this is just the prologue to it, just sort of getting all of that set up out of the way so we're not taking precious page time in the ongoing. I liked it for the fact that it gets the jokes and the fun that come naturally with these fifth dimensional imps out of the way so we can crack on with the plot. And after his Kingdom Come storyline, I'm quite looking forward to an arc that has a little bit more of a light-hearted tone to it, but one that's also looking to have some cool, interesting villains, as well as Cullen Bunn joining Waid, which I hope he does on the ongoing as well, which would make sense. It wouldn't really make much sense for him to join him on this little prologue and then not appear in the ongoing as a co-writer. So I'm really looking forward to that, as I love Bunn's work, and it's been a minute since I've read anything of his, so I'm really looking forward to seeing him back in DC and back playing with all of these characters. Edwin Galman does the art for the story, and his style just fits these characters so well. He's got a great handle on just the cartoonish aspects of Mxyzptlk and Batmite and all of these other fifth dimensional imps, and hopefully he's doing the ongoing art as well, since it would add a great cartoony feel to this storyline, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what that book will become. The next story picks up a plotline from Waid's main ongoing as Dennis Culver delivers a really fun globe-trotting adventure with Metamorpho, picking up right after his story in World's Finest ended. We find that Rex Mason has joined Simon and Sapphire Stagg as they head to the island of one of Stagg's friends to examine an ancient temple thought to house the fabled Hammer of Vulcan. The mission has Rex thinking of his father, the legendary Montana Mason, a famed relic hunter in his own right, and we learn a little bit about their past and how after Rex became Metamorpho, he never actually heard from his father again. I like Culver's ever so brief yet informative dive into Rex's past with his father, and how he and his father clash over how to be relic hunters, with Rex wanting to go and chase fortune and glory so they don't have to live as poor relic hunters, whereas his father was more in for it for just pure academic study. There's a very early Henry Jones and Indiana Jones dynamic there, which I really like. Stuff like we saw at the start of The Last Crusade, and I thought that's really quite well brought out in the book in just this little part that Culver wrote. Eventually, Rex makes it into the temple, where he's confronted by a strange being in a giant dive suit who has the hammer. After a brief chase and fight, Rex is shocked to learn that the being is actually his father. The two have a big, long, drama-filled argument about Rex being Stagg's lackey in order to be with Sapphire. A father and son dynamic wasn't something I actually expected from Metamorpho, but it works really well, and I love how neither of them can actually see how much like each other they are. It's really quite a cool dynamic for this character. Rex decides to prove to his father his love for Sapphire means more than fortune and glory and his work for Stagg, as he tells Simon that the hammer was swallowed by the lava and the temple is now inaccessible, leaving it and his father alone in the temple. Metamorpho is a character I'm really surprised hasn't had a huge push, or hasn't kind of caught on a little bit, because he's a weird character, but he's also an interesting character because he's literally just Indiana Jones with superpowers, and his adventures are always really exciting as it often dives deep into DC lore and explores that, and also how he uses his powers to get out of sticky situations is always really interesting, since he's in control of literally every element known to man, which is just such a really cool and creative thing for writers to dive into. Hopefully with him appearing in the new Superman Legacy movie, he'll get more of a push in the near future, and hopefully maybe even an ongoing or at least a mini series, just so we can have a couple of globe-trotting adventures through the DC universe. Stephanie Williams next takes us into the life of Karen Beecher, hero known as Bumblebee, and treats us to a story before she became the hero that joined the Teen Titans. Karen is enlisted by a family friend whose insurance has ripped them off, causing his disabled daughter to almost be badly hurt thanks to a faulty and low-quality prosthetic leg. Karen takes it upon herself to expose Buckland Insurance and Buckland Mart for the shoddy work and breaks into their factory, only to find that they aren't just making dangerous technology, but also developing an illegal surveillance project to spy on their customers with said products. Karen manages to get the info she needs to help expose the company and gives it to a reporter friend who sends it worldwide and exposes the company and their owners, Stag Industries, which I kind of feel was like a nice little sort of organic flow from the Metamorpho story before this. I think it was a nice little tie-in between those two stories, both involving Stag. Bumblebee is a character I'm not overly familiar with. I only have really seen her in Young Justice, and she's appeared here and there in comics I've read, but never has been a main character or, a big part of the storylines. And I like that Williams goes through the makeup of her character pretty concisely through this short time. I really like that she's a community-driven hero, helping the people out around her community, and it's nice to see that the tech she's developing isn't the usual stuff you see with these characters who are more tech-based. She's not developing hand blasters or anything just yet. It's all just technology that will help her get what she needs in that moment. And in this one, she just uses her little Bumblebee surveillance things to sort of spy on the scientists, and she also has some very early versions of her wings, which are really quite cool to see. And I like that she's still learning all this sort of stuff from her friend Birdie. The final story of the book is by one of my favorite writers, Christopher Cantwell, who recently wrote the amazing Iron Man series over at Marvel. Cantwell dives headfirst into a trippy story involving the Challengers of the Unknown, who are sent by Batman to deal with an out-of-control super collider which has ripped a hole through space and time. For those unfamiliar with the team, they are very much like DC's answer to the Fantastic Four. They're a group of adventurers who survived a disaster and are drawn together to fight for good at the edge of human knowledge and reality. The team enter the super collider and work to seal the cross-dimensional rift, which could destroy their reality if it merges with theirs, and to try and shut it off, June jumps into the super collider beam in an effort to disrupt it, but as a result is trapped within the collider as the team escape back out of it. June's death, however, doesn't really last long, or at least time is relative when it comes to the Challengers, and she actually turns back up in Challengers Mountain, telling the leader Ace that she woke up on the mountain that the other team members had their plane crash on years ago, and was the thing that drove them to become the Challengers of the Unknown. And this is kind of her learning and giving her perspective on how and why the team do what they do. It's definitely a very weird story, and one that fits really well with these types of characters and really the stories that the Challengers have found themselves in the past. And Cantwell does his best to try and make it somewhat approachable for people who might not have read any of their books or aren't familiar with the characters. However, I do feel it would be best if you did know a little bit about these characters, or at least who they are, since it does rely on you at least knowing that much. If DC could lock Cantwell down for a Challengers mini-series, that would be so cool. I'd love to see him continue this, as this is such a high-concept sci-fi series that I feel they are lacking right now. I think the closest you'd probably get to this with what DC are doing right now is stuff like what Philip Kennedy Johnson is doing over on Green Lantern and what he did with Action Comics. It's just that really deep sci-fi stuff, and I think that DC could benefit from more of that sort of stuff, since it's always great, and they have some really weird sci-fi characters that I think could come back in a big way, like the Challengers. The first annual of the year for World's Finest was a fantastic collection of stories that lives up to Waid's mission statement for the book, just to make the World's Finest not just the title for Batman and Superman alone, but for all of DC's Earth-based heroes. I thoroughly enjoyed all of the stories and how each covered different genres within the larger superhero genre. And best of all, it was really worth the cover price. This is almost 50 pages of just great storytelling, and you can't really beat that. I'm going to give this issue a 9 out of 10.